Well, howdy there, guys. Welcome back to Stewie MTG, and today we're taking a look at actually Pleasant Kenobi's Thalia and the Gitrog Monster Landfall deck that I've been using on Arena. So far, this deck, if I scroll up here, has been about 75 to 80% win rate. Hopefully you too, like me, have your coffee with you today, as this is going to be a little bit longer video than normal. So after playing it, I don't know, 30 or 40 times so far, I decided to make some changes. And I'm going to actually end up building this one in paper. I, in fact, ordered some of the cards for it today via Card Kingdom. No, we're not sponsored, but just been using them a lot lately. And so let's actually dig into some of the changes. The key thing here, like most landfall decks, is triggering multiple lands coming into play so that other things can trigger. So we need things like the New Capenna search lands, things that I added later, such as Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, to get out basic lands into play to trigger the different landfall abilities, such as Felidar Retreat they have over here. I normally, once I have Scoot Swarm mobs out, I'll use the second landfall ability to add a +1/+1 counter on each creature and giving it vigilance so that I can attack and not worry about crackback. We've got other things in here that trigger, such as Druid's Class gaining life, Primeval Bounty also gaining us life, Zendikar's Royal getting more 2/2 elementals. So different landfall triggers going on, as well as we want to be able to play lands out of the graveyard. So there's things like Crucible of Worlds and the new card out of New Phyrexia, the Conduit of Worlds, allowing us to play cards out of our graveyard. Now, when looking at this, I bought this on Arena, used up a bunch of my wild cards to fill out the deck and cards that I didn't have. But in paper, there's 6 cards that are really, really pricey. Number one, Crucible of Worlds, right now going around 20 bucks. And it's one of the cheaper cards in the deck. So if you wanted to build this deck and remove the pricey cards, the only one that's kind of maybe a necessity for the deck would be that Crucible of Worlds. The others can be replaced by maybe not as efficient cards, such as the Meat Hook Massacre that we have here. It's a $60 card. If you don't have it, another type of board wipe, maybe Toxic Deluge or something else in the place of it would work just fine. Or excuse me, $39. Dryad of the Elysian Grove is thankfully come down in price, and it's just, yes, another opportunity to play another land on your turn, but depending upon your budget, there could be other options. Ancient Green Wardens, another $15 card. Once again, Ancient Green Wardens like Crucible of Worlds and Conduit of Worlds that you can play cards out of your land cards out of your graveyard. So it does help with how the deck runs, making sure you get multiple landfall triggers each turn. Finale of Devastation is a $47 card. Wow, it's making me think of selling my 2 Finale of Devastations to be able to afford a deck like this. But it's not necessary. Yes, it can be. We're getting multiple lands out. Mana is not going to be an issue. And so many times, probably every other time I play this deck, I'm able to crack Finale of Devastation for 12. And I will usually end up getting the Ancient Green Warden, if I haven't already played it, or coming down here, making sure I get Scoot Swarm, or maybe Azusa, or my Rabina Excavator, or Gitrog Monster for that creature that you want to play. The Scape Shift, it can be replaced. And in fact, one of my suggestions in our additions could be a good replacement for it. In total, I have removed 23 cards out of the deck. And it's going to be on our right-hand side here. Let me go and change up the way that we're going to view this. I'm using Architect today, and they have this great thing that you can use view as brewer. And you can actually select a specific category, and it pops up here at the top row. So here's the cards I've removed for one reason or another. First up is Lotus Field. I don't have it. Half the time the sacking 2 lands actually hurts me. In most of the recent games I've played, it has actually been in my hand early rather than later when I have the Conduit of Worlds, the Crucible of Worlds, or the Ancient Green Warden out to play those lands again. Diabolic Intent, I don't really play with tutors unless they're tutors for enchantments. So, because enchantments in general aren't super powerful, and so if I'm tutoring for an enchantment, I'm not going to get the type of hate as just a demonic tutor, Diabolic Intent can get, and it's kind of pricey. Castle Lochthwain, I've never used it in the 40 or 50 games. I think I've drawn it once, and it just ended up getting pitched. The Gitrog Arena version, once again, I've played it once or twice. Half the time it just ends up getting removed before I can really swing with it. And the ability to spend mana and sack the land to draw a card, at least for me in the 40 or 50 games I've played, hasn't been used. Let's put it that way. Journey to Eternity, it has some interaction. If you had a sack outlet for a creature, to be able to make sure that you could flip Journey for Eternity. But I'm, once again, like Gitrog, I haven't used it. And same comment is for all of the Planeswalkers here. Whether it's Vraska, Garruk, or Nissa. Excuse me. They just end up getting removed. Lately, it's been 9 times out of 10. They're the first things that get attacked and removed off the table. And I might get 1, maybe 2 activations off of them. It's usually their plus abilities, which for these, okay, so you sacrifice another permanent, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Okay, Fire X in Arena. Well, stick that in here as a draw spell instead. Garruk Relentless, oh boy, 3 damage to a target, or a 2/2 Wolf. For 4 mana, I'd rather do something else. Nissa of Shadow Balls, once again, create an elemental or a land creature token. Not really a big deal. I really want my Scoot Swarms more than I want any of the 3 of these. And you'll also start to see here, I removed, in the original version, there was all the fetch lands. Or the shock lands, excuse me. They're pricey. And if it weren't for the fact I used wildcards on Arena to get them, I didn't already have them. And so when I build this in paper, I'm not putting shock lands in. Not even including the Triome. Gilded Goose was a big fat goose egg, pun intended. Never really did much for me. I would rather have in paper a Birds of Paradise or even a Llanowar elf than the Gilded Goose. Elvish Reclaimer, I would play often, but since it doesn't, it requires sacrifice of lands and then to search, it was a late game play. If I've got something that's 1 mana like that, instead of Elvish Reclaimer, I'd rather have a Llanowar elf, Elvish Mystic, something else that gives me value. And you might be asking, why, Chris, are you removing that new Vorinclex? Yes, he's a powerful card, but not necessarily in this context. I was never able to use his second ability. Yes, 5 mana, you get to search up 2 lands, and I never flipped him. He ends up being a huge removal target like the Gitrog monster, and so I just chose to remove him. I don't understand why the first Auroran Games is in here, other than you create 1 token, whoop-de-doo. You put a couple of 1/1 counters, You do have a possibility of drawing cards, but we've got some other card draw options. I removed Nissa for a similar reason here with the other Planeswalkers. Yes, her ramp is great, but I'd almost rather have Zendikar Resurgent in the ability to both draw cards and multiply my mana. Zendikar Resurgent is not in this version of it, but it will be in the paper version. I removed Thalia and Esper Sentinel because our commander is already Staxy. We don't need more stacks pieces in the deck. I play in a lower powered meta, and except for on Arena, and those two they're just going to get hated out. They're just going to make me a target, especially in a multiplayer group. Sarah Paragon, in the 40 or 50 games I've played, never used. And then the last several that I took out were once again the Shocklands and here the Triome. Cycling can be nice, so if you want to include it, you can. Not necessarily my big thing. So what is it that I added? So I added 13 regular cards, and then the other 10 I added as basic lands to bring the land count up to 39. I believe the original version of the deck had 34 lands. And yes, you have a lot of land search, but you want those triggers. You want to be drawing lands. So I added an Evolving Wilds and a Terramorphic Expanse, which weren't in the original version of the deck. Also, as I was playing the deck, I needed a lot more removal. Spot removal and board wipes, especially the spot removal. So I added the Doomblade, the Feed the Swarm, the Death Sprout. And notice there the Death Sprout allows you to search for a land and to play it, which will trigger your landfall stuff for only another mana more than a Feed the Swarm or 2 more mana than a Feed the Swarm or Doomblade. Also added a Sign in Blood for a little bit of more card draw. Often when I got stuck, my problem was card volume. I'd be going through lands, playing the lands out of my graveyard, but I wasn't getting the interaction that I needed. I included the Invasion of Zendikar, mainly for the landfall and as well as the mana dork on the backside. And then I added some finishers in the form of Endrace Forerunners as an overrun ability. Sometimes I would have 100, 110 Scoot Swarm mobs on the field and needed a way to give them trample in order to finish out a game. And in the base version of the deck, you didn't have that. Endrace Forerunners gives me that. The 8 mana is not really a big deal because we're normally, by turn 5 or 6, I normally have 10 mana. Nylee's Invention is a way of searching those lands, getting them into my hand. We've got ways of playing extra lands. Or you could use it as a removal spell, but most likely I'm going to be pulling lands. Disenchant, once again, another form of removal. There were no board wipes besides Meathook Massacre in the original version of the deck. So I've added Day of Judgment and Wrath of God. Yes, it wipes some of my creatures, but sometimes if someone gets out of the gate before you, or their Scoot Swarms are getting massive, you need a way to wipe the board. And so an inclusion of 2 board wipes along with Meathook Massacre making 3 isn't that much. And lastly, the Heliod's Intervention as a form of either life gain or removal. So added 13 cards, the rest were basic lands. Once again, the land base can vary depending on your budget. If you want to add the Shocklands, add the Shocklands. If you want to add the Triomes, add the Triomes. But in basically my both online and soon my paper version is going to be predominant basic lands. It helps because they come in untapped. I'm not really worried about color fixing as much. And, buffing up our card draw as well as our removal is a great thing. Well, if you guys have any comments, suggestions, especially for the arena version of the deck, make sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. Let me know. And if you play arena, drop me your name and, when I'm on, we can hook up for a game. Well, this has been Stewie MTG, and I actually have a package opening coming up next. So we will catch you guys later.